welcome back, everybody. Hands-on apologetics. And like I said, Islam is definitely on the radar screen for defenders of the faith. Many Muslims in the United States are engaging in evangelism and converting Americans to Islam. So it's important for us to know the beliefs of Islam, where we agree, where we disagree. And interesting enough, there is an intersection of faith, or belief, I should say, between Islam and the Virgin Mary and Catholicism. And to help explore all those differences and similarities, we have our good friend William Albrecht with us. And William Albrecht, welcome back to Hands-on Apologetics.
Gary, thrilled to be here with you. You brought up that I've debated Islamic apologists a lot, and I have, in fact, a few days back, I debated this very topic we're going to be talking about today, the Mary in Islam compared to the Mary of Catholicism. So it's just a topic that and as you know, I love doing a lot of work in the field of Mariology. So it really is an area that I have a great fascination in, and an area where I've been doing a lot of work in as well. Yeah,
it's really interesting because, William, I don't know where you stand on this, actually, but I know there are theologians, Catholic theologians, especially early ones, that believed that Islam wasn't a world religion, but was actually a kind of heretical break-off of Christianity. I don't know. Where do you stand on that? Would you consider it a heresy or a schism or both or something completely different?
Yeah, I think I would take the position, as you mentioned, of the great St. John Damascene, that this really does seem to be an early, and when we say early, we mean several centuries late into history, Christian heresy. So it really does seem to me that their prophet, by the name of Muhammad, really adopted a lot of what he would have had access to. He would not have had access to a complete Bible, Old and New Testament. And by the way, this is the prevalent view in academia. The very best Islamic scholars, such as Dr. Gabriel Said Reynolds, individuals that have examined the most ancient manuscripts, that are the top scholars, would agree that Muhammad would have been limited in what he would have had access to. So you can tell very much that he adopts what he had access to in the Bible, into his holy book, his Quran. And then outside of that, literature that was very prevalent and popular in his area, such as the Syriac infancy Gospels, apocryphal Gospels. So we can tell very much so that Muhammad did not have a very good grasp of the Christian faith. And what he did have a good grasp of, you can tell he just reworked into his version of his religion.
Yeah, so in a way, it kind of gives us a somewhat distorted, though, but a snapshot of beliefs back in the 600s, late 600s.
Yeah, no, you're correct. You're definitely correct, Gary. And you bring up a very good point that you get a snapshot into really kind of the world and the life of Muhammad, what he pretty much puts inside of his holy book. And it is important. People may think, well, why is Mariology important to examine in the Quran and in Islam? Well, it's incredibly important because, as we emphasize, within our Catholic faith, within any ancient apostolic faith, Mariology, a correct Mariology, along with it comes a proper Christology. And we can tell there are a lot of areas where Catholicism and Islam agree when it comes to the figure of Mary. But you can tell that there's one particular area, and we'll get to that in a moment, where we disagree, and it makes a massive area of difference. For instance, you're right about Islam being an incredibly fast-growing religion. In fact, you have many, many new converts every year. And one of the attractive things that you find within the Islamic faith that you hear, not attractive to a Trinitarian, but perhaps somebody that it's not very well versed in the in the Christian faith, they'll hear, well, look, they'll target Hispanics. The Hispanic community are converting at a very fast rate. They'll target them and they'll say, look, you love Mary, you venerate Mary. Well, in the Quran, we have a whole chapter on Mary, Surah 19. In fact, in the whole Quran, it's the only one that is named after a woman. And in fact, Mary is the only woman that is named in the whole Quran. And so they will say, well, if you honor Mary, we honor her even more so. And, that gets people very interested. And they then look and they'll see, well, look, even in Islam, there's a tradition of Mary being all immaculate. you will have scholars that will say it is pretty much the very same thing as the Immaculate Conception, despite the fact that within Islam, there is not a complex theology and original sin. It amounts to the same thing, because in the Quran, Surah 342, you read, "O Mary, indeed Allah has chosen you and purified you and chosen you above the women of the world." So you have a very similar teaching in the Quran. And remember, the Quran, they're very similar in the sense that they don't hold to Quran only. They also look at the hadiths. So there's also a hadith, the Book of Virtuous Qualities, that says that neither Jesus nor Mary were pricked by Satan at birth. And it notes very well that everyone is pricked at birth except for Christ and Mary. That is so similar to the way the early church fathers talked about Mary's Immaculate Conception and Mary being without any stain of sin. It really does sound very similar, doesn't it, Gary?
Yeah, and that's very impressive, because that would imply that that Muhammad was pricked by Satan at birth as well.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
But Jesus and Mary are exempt from that.
That is correct. And in fact, what really does stick out to me, and this is great. This is my favorite platform to come on to, Gary, because you always dig into the meat and potatoes. You talk about the early church fathers, and the one thing that blows me away even today is when you read that neither Jesus nor Mary were pricked by Satan. It really does remind me of the language of the great Ephraim the Syrian, who in his Nisabine hymn 27 or 28, depending how you number it, says that only you and your mother are without stain, referring to Christ and Mary, that coming from the great Ephraim the Syrian. And I was talking with a great scholar, Dr. Gabriel Said Reynolds, Islamic top scholar, and he says, yes, it is very likely that Muhammad would have had access to the writings of the Syriac father, Ephraim the Syrian, and the language he utilizes is very reminiscent of the language of not only Ephraim, but Jacob of Sarug and many other great Syriac fathers. It shouldn't surprise us when we find similar language preserved in the Quran or preserved in hadiths. And that really is, that's incredible, because you clearly have Muhammad working from a theological framework that is so similar to the way that we view Mary, although we'll find out later on there's one key detail that Muhammad abandoned that is present in the ancient apostolic faith. And for that, we have to really sound the alarm bells.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. So Mary certainly seems to be singled out from all of humanity, along with Jesus being preserved. And so, we would say original sin. Of course, Islam has different concepts of that. Where else does Islam kind of pair well with Christianity in regards to Mary?
Yeah, very interestingly, Gary, you're going to find out throughout the Quran and throughout hadiths that Mary is a perpetual virgin. This is something very, very important within Islam. In fact, you're not going to find any top Islamic scholar or anybody that is a practicing Orthodox, I say tiny of course, Orthodox Muslim, that are going to argue that Mary ever had any other children. So that's a very important teaching that you find within Islam as well. They believe Mary was a perpetual virgin. Another thing, and these are incredible, Gary, the fact that there are so many parallels that you're going to find in what is believed about Mary. Remember, Mary's all immaculate. Mary has no sin. Whether you want to call it the Immaculate Conception or not, it essentially is the very same thing. She's presented as all immaculate within Islam. She's a perpetual virgin within Islam as well. And also, very interestingly enough, Mary is bodily assumed into heaven as well. She is assumed. We read of all Islamic scholars are going to tell you when it talks about in the Quran, a place having been prepared for her in the afterlife. It is talking about a paradise prepared for her. It says, a lofty place has been prepared for me. So there is also the parallel of Mary being assumed into heaven. Mary's immaculate, Mary's perpetual virgin, and there's also a parallel of Mary being assumed into heaven in the Quran and in Islamic tradition. So many incredible parallels. You clearly can tell that in the region where Muhammad was from, where he was writing, where he lived, these were very prevalent teachings. So, and he would have been aware of the bodily assumption, the perpetual virginity, the Immaculate Conception, because remember, he's aware of the writings of the great Syriac fathers, and these teachings are very prevalent in the great Ephraim the Syrian. They're prevalent in Jacob of Sarug and many other great Syriac fathers. But as with everything else, again, our position as Catholics is that if you want the Mary of history, if you want the true Mary, I always joke around and say, when dialoguing with Muslims, if we ever debate with them on this issue, it's a matter of, will the real Mary stand up? And you get a lot of truth of the historical figure of Mary in Islam, but you don't get the full picture. And that full picture of the historical figure of Mary can only be found within Catholicism. Now, people will say, well, William, that's a rather bold statement. But if we can back that statement up, Gary, from Holy Writ, from sacred scripture, from the writings of the earliest fathers, those that would have walked and talked the earth with the apostles who knew the risen Christ, we can get a fuller picture of that historic figure of Mary that we want to learn about. And when we do get that fuller picture, we realize that within Islam, with all of those wonderful things that may have about Mary, unfortunately, it does not have the real Mary presented, because the real Mary is also Theotokos, which means God-bearer, mother of God. We also refer to Mary as Theotokos, as our all-holy mother of God. And of course, remember how we talked about at the beginning? A proper Mariology leads to a proper Christology. The absence of that within Islam, because they deny Christ as eternal God or as God in any manner, is a very glaring detail left out of the Mary presented in Islam.
Yeah, it strikes me that although they hold these tenets about Mary, it doesn't. I mean, I don't understand the roots of it. I mean, we would say Mary's immaculate because she's the new Eve, and she's going to bear God. Yeah. And the bodily assumption too. There's a logic behind these things. But I don't know if Islam has logic behind it. Why her as opposed to Moses's wife or something? Yeah. Okay, well, I hear the music coming up. We'll hit pause right there. We're chatting with William Albrecht, talking about Mary and Islam. More to come right after this. Stay tuned.
Genesis 1:27 says, God created man in his own image. Male and female he created them. According to Pope St. John the 23rd, it is not true that some human beings are by nature superior and others inferior. All human beings are equal in their natural dignity. May God help us to look upon everyone as a person created in his image and likeness, and treat everyone the same without favoritism or prejudice.
This is a catechetical minute from Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
God is love, and love is his first gift, containing all others. God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit, who has been given to us. Catechism of the Catholic Church, number 733. Everyone who has been given the breath of life has been given a puzzle to solve. To live well and happily is a mystery we try to unravel daily. Love is the answer that solves the mystery of life and unlocks the door to joy. Father, pour out your Spirit upon us, that we may live in the light of your love.
This has been a catechetical minute from Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
Buying or selling your home or your business property? This is Terry Barber. Real Estate for Life underwrites The Terry and Jesse Show. and they can connect you to one of 900 pro-life real estate agents around the world. And when they receive their referral fee, they will give 80% of it to a pro-life organization. Wow, that's 80%. realestateforlife.org, 877-LIFE-US1.
This is Jesse Romero. You're listening to Hands-On Apologetics with Gary Machuda on Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
And welcome back, everybody. Hands-On Apologetics. We are chatting with William Albrecht of patristicpillars.com, talking about Mary and Islam. In the last segment, we were looking at things that our beliefs kind of align together, that they hold that Mary is, in some sense, like immaculate conception or sinless, that Mary's a perpetual virgin, and that maybe even she is